House bills, as you know, aligns very closely with the DNR's mandate. Now, an integral part of our policy is to have an ecosystem-based approach into our work, including in influencing national infrastructure planning, given the country's high exposure to climate risks and the increasing economic cost of disaster impacts. Now, from the DNR's perspective, nature-based solutions can generate triple win outcomes, and of course, it addresses multiple societal challenges. One that is important for us is on climate resilience, reducing climate-related risk. Another would be on biodiversity conservation, of course, protecting and restoring ecosystems that sustain ecological services. And lastly, on the economic benefits, to reduce the long-term infrastructure costs while creating livelihood opportunities. We recognize ecosystems as functional infrastructure assets that represent a paradigm shift in development planning. There are some recommendations that maybe later we can further elaborate on, Mr. Chair, but in general, we feel that nature-based solutions should be an integral part of the local development planning. Of course, we have already indicated in our national adaptation plan as a cross-cutting approach, nature-based solutions, so that's already there. We would also like to prioritize actions that yield multiple ecosystem service outcomes, including, again, like biodiversity conservation, livelihoods, and supply chain resilience. And we would like to see NBS expanded in our NIPAS and other mechanisms under the mandate of the DNR. So I will stop here, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ASEC Noraline Uy. I think Yusek David is also here. Would like to give the floor to Yusek Carlos David, our Undersecretary for Integrated Environmental Science.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In general, as ASEC Lenny has mentioned, the DNR welcomes this proposed bills from Congress. It's high time that we consider alternative strategies to the pressing problems of the country. Although, of course, there is a caveat there. We cannot do nature-based infrastructure, for example, if the DNR itself is not considered an infrastructure department. Needless to say, how can we do projects on the ground when our budget is even lower than the budget of the Bureau of Fire? We are in charge of the whole country and all ecosystems, but our budget year in and year out is only 28 billion pesos. Nevertheless, I believe that the issues that we faced last year, including the flood control issues, paved the way for everyone to see that our problems, flooding, for example, are all integrated, and the main solution, or at least one of the solutions to such problems, is looking back at nature, restoration of nature, in fact, enhancement of nature, which provides safeguards for our communities in terms of flooding, but at the same time that there are allied benefits that we get from it. I think this kind of strategy is welcome, and I hope that DNR and its current leadership will take on the cudgels of leading us into a different way of looking at problems and securing our future to be more climate resilient, at the same time making sure that there is progress in our communities and that the environment is protected. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Yusek David. It's true, no? This is a very good opportunity for us to really revisit the way we pursue development. For the longest time, para kasing hindi tayo conscious with what is happening uh, around us, no, especially in our case in Bukidnon, no, Cagayan de Oro is always at the mercy of what is happening upstream, no. So if we don't take care of our watersheds, then you can really expect na babahain din ang Cagayan de Oro and all the low-lying communities, no. So this is really high time that we consider nature protection as at the center of any discussion on development, no.
May I just add something that listening to you, it triggered something as well. No, very quickly lang. We are all for the restoration of nature, but let us not forget that this is not the only objective, because in DNR we see that for reforestation efforts to work, first and foremost, the people on the ground need a viable livelihood. None of the restoration that we will do in our forests will be sustained if our countrymen are hungry and that they will have to get resources from the forest and cut them down. We are not in agreement of hardcore protect the environment conservation, without looking at the other aspects of society, including livelihood and income generation. This is something that we will have to plan as a whole of government, in order for it to work.
That is actually very accurate, Yusek, no? Because who will protect nature if the people in that community are actually very poor, no? So it's very important that we consider everything. No, that's why in Bukidnon we really consider agroforestry, to provide income opportunity for our people. At the same time, the idea is people must realize that protecting the environment is actually beneficial to them. No, so you provide livelihood opportunities, but at the same time, they are able to protect the watersheds. No, the Honorable Persis Sendanya is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mabilis lamang po kasi we've mentioned about how difficult the lives of our kababayans are, and they resort to extracting the resources from our forest para sila makatawid. Pero nabanggit din po ni Yusek David na hindi lang po yung mga kababayan yung mahirap. Mukha po kay DNR, mahirap din po, very poor. So, yung po yung una kong narinig kasi nga po, papasok na naman tayo sa budget cycle. And just to help this committee imagine how a legislation like this would impact on the budget planning model that we have now. Ano po ba yung nakikita ninyo na kailangan ng DNR na maponduhan pagdating po dito sa area na ito? And for 2027 po, mayroon na ba tayong inaay para nang sa ganun ay masuportahan tayo ng committee dito sa effort na ito? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yusek David.
Thank you, Congressman. Maubos yung oras natin kung maglitanya ako nung what I think are projects that are viable and should be funded. This is not a matter of just increasing our budget per se, but we see from the last 3 years at least that there are certain sectors wherein when we fund them, it provides cascading impacts. And I'm a little bit biased here, but when we fund projects for basic utilities like water, it goes beyond just the provision of water, but the overall the general welfare of our communities actually increase when we provide that. Case in point, we were provided, and thanks to partly to Congress, we were given 150 million pesos. Now, this is equivalent to one flood control project, basically 150 million. And we utilized this fund from last year to to provide water, access to drinking water to 20,000 Filipinos already. No, such a small investment to provide that big an impact to our communities, I think is worth funding all over again.
Thank you, Yusek David. So,
Mr. Chair, just a very quick rejoinder.
Okay.
Perhaps with this measures that is part of our agenda today, including our resolution, we can provide some level of reorientation when it comes to the funding model for the DNR so that eventually DNR will not be one of the poorest agencies, which has the greatest responsibility in these times and the greatest challenge in responding to the challenges of the times. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
thank you, Honorable Percy Sandanya. Now we proceed to the next agency. We'd like to hear from OCD.
Mr. Chair, good afternoon. Honorable members of the House Committee on Disaster Resilience, fellow resource persons, the Office of Civil Defense would like to express its utmost support to the green infrastructure and nature-based solutions measure currently under deliberation this afternoon. With our country blessed with a huge natural capital, it is just but necessary to mainstream our collective effort to integrate green infrastructure and nature-based solutions to all applicable frameworks. It is high time that we treat these initiatives not simply as a measure of policy, but rather a call to action, which will be made possible through a passage of this measure and the bills at hand. As a proud partner of this committee, the OCD stands ready to provide necessary support should there be a need for a TWG for the consolidation of the subject measures. We will submit our official position paper outlining our comments and recommendations at the soonest possible time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Attorney Recalde. Now we would like to hear the representative of the Climate Change Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to colleagues and members of the committee. So on behalf of the Climate Change Commission, the CCC extends its appreciation to the Committee on Disaster Resilience for allowing us to provide our comments and insights on these proposed measures. So at this juncture, we would like to inform that we are yet to submit our position paper. However, at least we'd like to inform the committee that the CCC supports the intent of the bills to institutionalize green infrastructure and nature-based solution as part of the climate change adaptation strategy and long-term climate resilience pathway. So this is likewise consistent with the NAP, particularly under priority area on ecosystems and biodiversity, where the protection, restoration, and sustainable management of forests, watersheds, and coastal ecosystems are identified as key adaptation strategies. The CCC likewise notes that the nature-based solutions, or NBS, contribute to strengthening the country's resilience to climate change impacts, including flooding, storm surges, and other climate-related hazards, while delivering co-benefits such as biodiversity conservation, improved ecosystem services, and sustainable livelihoods. So, of course, the CCC, in view of the foregoing, the CCC interposes no objection to the enactment of these bills, as these measures will ensure the proper institutionalization of NBS and the green infrastructure, and that we likewise recommend that, of course, these measures be explicitly incorporate gender responsiveness, inclusive, and community-centered approaches. The CCC stands ready, of course, to work closely with Congress and other national government agencies and other relevant stakeholders in advancing these efforts and strengthening and further enriching the rationality of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, CCC. Now I would like to call on DepDev. Do you have a representative from the Department of Economy, Planning and Development? Wala. Okay, sige. DPWH, any representative from Public Works?
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair and the distinguished members of the Committee on Disaster Resilience. On behalf of the DPWH, I would like to express for the department the support to these policy directions, the 3 House bills and 1 House resolution, in integrating the green infrastructure and nature-based solutions into national development planning and disaster risk reduction strategies, which we deem are now timely, considering that the major flood disasters that has been happening all throughout the country. These approaches, the GI and the NBS, can complement the conventional engineering practices and infrastructure systems in enhancing climate resilience. Their application, however, depends on site-specific conditions, technical feasibility, and the level of protection required by the communities that we are targeting for protection. It is therefore important to establish appropriate technical standards, feasibility assessments, and institutional coordination mechanisms to ensure that green, gray, and hybrid solutions can be properly identified and applied effectively and safely to ensure the resilience of the target communities. Once again, we would like to express the department's support for these House bills and House resolution. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Now we proceed with the Department of Interior and Local Government. And a representative from DILG. Wala. Department of Agriculture.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to everyone. From the Department of Agriculture, we pose no objection to the proposed bill on the use of green infrastructure and the use of national-based solutions. We just like to impose that with this proposal, we still ensure biosystems engineering, the digital age, and economic viability of our structure. We also would like to institutionalize biosystems engineering as a primary tool in implementing green infrastructures both in the agriculture and fishery sector. Right now, our department is implementing bits and pieces of these concepts on green infrastructures using the natural-based solutions. And we would like also to envision a climate-resilient agricultural landscape where nature and engineering coexist to ensure food security and maintain national wealth. Mr. Chair, we would submit a concrete proposal and comments on this proposed bill. That will be all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we call on the Department of Human Settlement and Urban Development. Any representative?
Yes.
Okay, ma'am, you are
Good
recognized.
afternoon, Mr. Chair, and to the members of the committee. On behalf of the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, the department acknowledged the significant role of the nature-based solution in green infrastructure in promoting sustainability and resilience climate change impacts. We support these bills which seeks to institutionalize and mainstream nature-based solution and green infrastructure as primary option for infrastructure development in the country. Pursuant to the mandate of the department on prescribing land use planning and zoning guidelines, the DSUD has recently developed and issued 2 major guidelines. First, the Resilient Urban Design and Development Guidelines, which provides technical and policy guidance to local government units on mainstreaming resilient urban design and local land use planning and budgeting processes. So the resilient urban design promotes the use of climate-responsive strategies, including the nature-based solution or ecosystem-based approach. And another policy or guidelines that developed by the department is the Open Space Development Guidelines, which aims to provide technical and policy guidelines on integrating open and green spaces in the comprehensive land use plan and mainstreaming its implementation and protection. So currently, the department also is conducting series of capacity building to pilot local government units to these two major guidelines, which aims to capacitate the local government units to properly plan, identify, and implement nature-based solutions and strategies and policies, and integration to the comprehensive land use plan. So the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development will be submitting our comments and our position paper and recommendations on the proposed legislative measures. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. Would like to proceed. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Honorable Tuazon.
Mr. Chair, quick question for DSUD. Ma'am, you mentioned that you have resilient urban design. I was wondering if you also would be designing similar spaces in towns in adherence to having or targeting the rollout of sustainable towns throughout the Philippines.
Yes po, ma'am. We are also rolling out these two guidelines, and right now we are just piloting into selected highly urbanized cities. But in the future, as planned, we will be targeting to roll out this to all local government units in the Philippines to really integrate the nature-based solutions in the planning process.
Thank you, ma'am. Another quick question also. You mentioned climate-responsive solutions and open space development guidelines. And one of the things we struggle with, actually, because in my district we're very rural, is where to locate, for example, retention basins that are a nature-based solution. And then, if so, how much they would cost. Are you using, and I was wondering in that regard, like, are you looking at the data, for example, of UPRI Project NOAA in helping identify where those retention basins should go? I understand that all our agencies have budget constraints, but I was wondering also if that is the sort of discussion that's already at play that we're not yet privy to. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. So in terms of open space and development guidelines, and what we expect for the local government units is to have a separate open space and development plan. And the first step is having an inventory of open space plan. So as an example po, asan po ba yung mga open space and development natin for they can prevent or mitigate for future uses, or even for disaster response or any disaster mitigation. But currently also as budget constraints, no, so yes, we really know that this would also is lacking for the budget, especially for the implementation of plans. Implementation and then monitoring. So for us to execute our guidelines and policies, we really also need to support through budgetary requirements or yun, to really capacitate the local government units po, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. But ma'am, if in the absence also of information submitted to you, are you able to like look at our maps, for example, based on open source data, and then help identify?
Yes po, ma'am. We can utilize also available data sets from the various national government agencies. So we understand that some of the national government agencies has already system or has already platform, and we can also use to identify open and green spaces po.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Chair, sorry, I'm mindful of the time and the fact that I will not be able to stay also. If I may be permitted to also ask a couple of questions to DNR. Ma'am, ASEC Lenny, USEC CP, I was wondering also, like, in trying to figure out where we can put the retention basins, are there designs available already, and is what's the indicative cost for that? And then because that's something we would like, for example, our district engineers to pitch or include and possibly get into the NEP. Thank you.
Thank you, Kong, for bringing that up. While retention basins and small, low height dams are theoretically not nature-based solutions, they are a solution to our impending climate crisis, wherein we are now seeing rainier rainy season and drier dry season, the total rainfall that we get annually will be the same. It won't be more, it won't be less, but the distribution becomes apparent, wherein we have stronger rains during the rainy season and longer dry periods during the summer. The solution to that is that we impound the water when there is an excess. I always say in committee meetings that when I look at floods, I see resources that are being wasted because that flood water is the same water that we will use for irrigation, for drinking water, for hydropower, ecotourism, and aquaculture. And yet, our strategy has always been to flush this out during the rainy season and then look at ourselves during the dry season. We don't have enough water. It's because we wasted it during the rainy season. So many countries have long realized this, Japan, Korea, also Thailand and Vietnam. They now impound all their water during the rainy season so that they have water to use during the dry season. And once we are able to do that, I assure everybody, the economy of the Philippines will grow simply because water is a basic utility not only for households but also for many industries. So I hope, although it's not nature-based technically, it is a viable strategy that we should take now moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Yusek CP.
The Honorable Rodriguez is recognized.
This is for the DNR, no? Floods in our country has always been a rule, not an exception. No? So, ever since I know Manila has been in flooding, and other cities, no? Now, DNR, these laws are just merely indicative of our desire that we become a nature-based approach, no? In any way we can. This also goes with the DNR, the Department of Public Works, no? In your opinion, has there been any initiative on this part long time ago? Because, these are just indicators of a program which we want to be emphasized in your agencies, especially DPWH, no? But for in your experience, I think you have been there for a USEC, no? DNR. Had there been some initiatives on this part, having these programs as envisioned in these bills? Because this is merely a emphasis on what we have to do in our environment. Had there been any program that is indicative of this concept that we have filed in these bills?
Mr. Chair, thanks, Kong. Number one in the list for nature-based solutions is always the restoration of our watersheds through reforestation. And for the last 14 years, we have had our flagship program in DNR called the National Greening Program. Incidentally, Congress and Senate canceled for the first time, after 14 years, our budget for the National Greening Program. Now, I'm not blaming you for canceling it because internally, we should also fix our systems first. So this is like a parang wake-up call for us, to fix our reforestation strategy, and which we are doing right now because we don't have a budget. 1 billion pesos was canceled in our budget for this year. But this is our time now to recalibrate that program for next year. Secondly, so that's our flagship program that's nature-based. Secondly, in terms of nature-based and impoundment of water, for example, to prevent flooding, we have a pilot project for this year in Nueva Ecija. Now, it will only cost 33 million pesos, but it will prevent something like 1.5 million cubic meters of excess water from coming down from Nueva Ecija and flooding Pampanga. This is what we want to show to everybody, that nature-based solutions not only work, but it's also more cost-effective at the same time, because we impound water, there's excess water for irrigation for the farmers of Nueva Ecija. No? So these win-win types of infrastructure, as what Asek Lenny mentioned, is what we wanted to promote. But obviously, I cannot convince everybody with just the concept. We wanted the pilot for everyone to see, and moving forward, we pursue these kinds of projects.
May I ask a question to the DPWH?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, you get my question? Do you have any, what have you done to best practices? The chairman said it right. Best practices on going into this concept that is green infrastructure and everything, nature-based solutions. Has there been any move for your department to do these things? Because you've been experiencing floods for so long. You have experienced it for decades, no? Decades.
Thank you for that inquiry, Your Honor. Actually, in DPWH now, since we are the one handling the foreign assisted projects, flood control projects, we are now venturing on, of course, river basin approach. As part of the river basin master plan, we try to, as much as possible, maintain the roof for the river. That's one of the nature-based solutions that you are mentioning. And we try to inculcate it or put it as part of the some of the major river basins that are target under ADB. That's the we have the Apayao-Abulug River Basin in the Cagayan and Apayao. We also have the Abra River Basin in Abra Province, including Ilocos Sur. So we are now trying, actually, to promote such kind of nature-based solutions, allowing flooding. So we don't want to have, as mentioned by USEC CPB, we don't want to waste all the water coming up from the upstream to be discharged just to the downstream. But we want to maintain some of the floodplains that we really need to actually replenish or to recharge our groundwater. That's one problem that we often encounter if we always flush out the floodwaters. Those are some of the things, together with just recently, but this will be implemented maybe during the medium term. For one of our projects, we try to propagate mangroves by incorporating modules in the places where they will be planted. Because one of the challenges for planting mangroves is because of the low survival rate. But we try to put in modules as part of the design of the project to actually allow the seedlings or the mangroves to propagate and serve as some level of protection to the communities.
I came to know that in many flood-prone cities, many of the creeks and waterways had been gone, meaning the subdivisions had been there, and then they put soil to add more to the homes. Though. So these are things that we should go back to the previous experience we have. When the creeks were there in front of our house, beside our houses, and now it's gone because there's been a house natambakan na, no? So those things are just really going back to nature, no? And I know of certain malls that have already filled up the creeks themselves because they have this mall's extension, and that is the Lamkitkay Mall in Cagayan de Oro. So floods have been there every year. So I don't know how we can really introduce these nature-based solutions, except to bring the creek back to life, no? Open it again so that there be no flooding. So siguro yun ang mga gawin natin to go back to the years that we had no flooding because there were creeks were open and not yet closed because of these improvements.
Yes, Mr. Honorable Member, Honorable sir. So actually, maybe not related, directly related, but just wanted to, yeah, that's a recognition that that is one of the problems that we are encountering, the uncontrolled development or land development in most cases that are happening. But I just would like to inform the body about, again, an ADB project that we have that actually forms part, one of the components is the capacity building for the local government units when it comes to flood risk management. That is a good thought that you shared, sir. Maybe we could make it part of some of the modules that we would be doing for the LGUs, specifically for, because this is the Infra 1 or the Integrated Flood Resilience and Adaptation Project. It is in Abra River, we have the Tagum Libuganon River, and we have the Ranao Agus. Those two are in Mindanao, and Abra is in the Luzon Island. So thank you, sir, for sharing po that, and maybe that's a good thing that we will input po dun sa program that we have for the capacity building of the LGUs.
Thank you, DNR, Yusek David, and thank you, Engineer Alpasan. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Rodriguez. Okay, the Honorable Cruzado
I'd like
is
to manifest
recognized.
my support to this, all of this bill, no? And it is very obvious, very clear that the result of this flooding is yung nawalan tayo ng forest. So, I challenge DNR to make a comprehensive plan. Yung greening, and also to
Ridge to Reef.
Reforestation of our forest. Budgetan talaga ito, and kami sa Congress is supporting this one. And also to have to involve agriculture para matulungan yung mga farmers that are involved in those areas. So, I'm from Mindanao. My area is flooded in Cotabato, and I saw how the lumbers were passes through the Rio Grande River when I was small, and after that, talagang flooding na every month. Yun ang nangyari. So, we're victims also of the damage to our environment. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Cruzado. We now proceed with the Department of Finance. We just like to request different resource persons, if you can a bit abbreviate your remarks, because we still have a number of resource persons that we need to recognize. Go ahead. Sir,
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and honorable members of this committee. I'm from the Fiscal Incentives Review Board Secretariat under the Department of Finance. The department is currently consolidating inputs from the underlying groups, but we essentially support the objectives of this of the subject bills, particularly the grant of fiscal incentives to investments or businesses listed in the Strategic Investment Priority Plan. This is aligned with the provisions of the CREATE Act, which is right now the Create More Act. So the Department of Finance will be submitting its position paper as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'd like to recognize DTI. Do we have a representative from the Department of Trade and Industry? Go ahead, sir. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the DTI, I would like to express our support for the proposed bills and resolutions. DTI recognizes that the intensifying impacts of climate change pose material risks not only to the country's ecological systems, but also to economic competitiveness and industrial productivity. In our lens, Your Honor, infrastructure resilience is a critical determinant of supply chain stability, investment attractiveness, and continuity of trade and industry operations. Accordingly, the institutionalization of green infrastructure framework has the potential to generate significant economic co-benefits, including enhanced disaster resilience, improved urban livability, and creation of green industries and employment opportunities. With that, Your Honor, we welcome the consolidation of these proposed measures and commit to submit our detailed position papers on the legislation. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, DTI. DOST, do we have a representative from the DOST? DOST? Okay, Philippine Information Agency.
Honorable Chair, esteemed legislators, fellow civil servants, good afternoon. The Philippine Information Agency welcomes its mandate in Section 19 of House Bills number 4888, 6346, and 6462, which outlines the public awareness and education provisions. As the government's premier public information agency, PIA is committed to develop and implement a mechanism for sustained national public information, education, and communication programs that promote awareness on green infrastructure and nature-based solutions, as well as gather feedback from the people, particularly at the grassroots level. Public information serves as a vital form of social infrastructure. Without a well-informed public that understands the value of natural assets such as mangrove forests or sponge cities, physical infrastructure investments risk neglect, encroachment, and insufficient infrastructure stewardship. PIA stands ready to support the National Green Infrastructure Council and other relevant agencies to ensure the successful implementation of a comprehensive public awareness strategy. Mr. Chair, beyond public awareness, and as a rejoinder to the inquiry of the Honorable Maximo Rodriguez Jr. earlier, PIA also respectfully recommends that the Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, to continue or prioritize the integration of green infrastructure in their program of works whenever government agencies ask endorsements for the rehabilitation, restructuring, and construction of new buildings and facilities, prioritizing nature-based solutions and open spaces over default gray settings that can enhance cost effectiveness while promoting environmental sustainability. While PIA defers to the technical expertise of agencies such as DENR and DPWH, we reaffirm our commitment to leading the public awareness component, as well as informed public is essential to safeguarding these natural assets and ensuring the long-term sustainability of infrastructure and investments. Furthermore, Mr. Chair, just like with the position of DNR, as PIA takes on this initiative, we welcome and appreciate the committee's support in furthering the agency's various programs relative to serving this endeavor. In closing, Mr. Chair, PIA commends this distinguished chamber and the esteemed authors of these bills for championing GI and NBS as a pathway towards more sustainable and disaster-resilient Philippines. We are grateful for the confidence this committee has in this agency in the realization of these measures. We submit these comments for favorable consideration, and we look forward to the advancement of these bills, Mr. Chair. The agency is just finalizing all inputs, and it assures the committee that our position paper will be submitted to the Secretariat the soonest. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now we'd like to call on DepEd. Do we have a representative from the Department of Education? DepEd. No. CHED. PSA. UP Resilience Institute. UPRI. Okay, UP SERP. We'd like to recognize Dean Dina Magnaye. Dean, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the Committee on Disaster Resilience. We from the academe are privileged to provide these inputs to these timely bills on green infrastructure and nature-based solution for sustainable and resilient national development. The proposed bills and resolution aim to address flooding, extreme heat, coastal erosion, and sea level rise resulting from climate change by operationalizing and institutionalizing green infrastructure and nature-based solutions. Further mandating to prioritize green first option in infrastructure building and the formulation of the National Green Infrastructure Master Plan. These are our inputs. On the definition of terms, we would like to suggest that we include the definition of whole of government approach, whole of society approach, the ridge-to-reef approach, which was mentioned earlier, and the life cycle assessment. And this should complement the financial focus of the life cycle cost analysis by accounting for the carbon emissions of assets at each stage of development and use, especially for hybrid infrastructure. We also need to include the term ecosystem valuation, which refers to the process of assigning economic value to the benefits provided by ecosystems and their services. On the institutional framework and mandates, we suggest to include the Philippine Statistics Authority as a member to account for the natural accounting and system valuation as provided by RA 11995 or the Philippine Ecosystem and Natural Capital Accounting System or PENCAS Act. And this act integrates ecosystem services into national economic planning, policy making, and decision making to support sustainable development. We also suggest to include the role of professional planners to complement local government units in their planning mandates and for the provision of technical knowledge and capacity building for valuation and development of green infrastructure. For instance, the city of Antipolo, with their collaborative undertaking with the professionals, was able to pass a city ordinance on strategic framework for the promotion and development of blue-green infrastructure. Under mandates of key national government agencies, we emphasize following focused roles and collaborative mechanisms, with the DNR leading the restoration and rehabilitation of natural systems integral to the Green Infrastructure Plan, serving as the primary steward for ecosystem integrity and natural-based solutions. DPWH and DNR shall collaborate closely in the planning, design, and implementation of green infrastructure, hybrid infrastructure, and nature-based solutions to ensure climate resilient, sustainable, and cost-effective outcomes. The PSA, the DOF, and DNR shall jointly undertake ecosystem services valuation to quantify benefits, inform investment decisions, and supporting financing mechanisms. DepDev leads the development of the National Green Infrastructure Master Plan, while LGUs are responsible for integrating it into their comprehensive land use plans. And this process should adopt a combined bottom-up and top-down approach. Top-down national guidance from the NGIMP sets overarching policy standards and priorities, while bottom-up input from LGUs ensure alignment with local needs, participatory process, ecological realities, and community priorities, thereby promoting iterative harmonization and consistency across levels. We also suggest to adopt an integrated project evaluation framework to operationalize and strengthen the Green First principle in all relevant infrastructure proposals. And this framework should include the life cycle cost analysis, the life cycle assessment, ecosystem services valuation, although these are technical terms which we provided in our input that we submitted this morning. The project evaluation framework shall ensure that project planning and investment decisions systematically consider long-term economic efficiency, environmental sustainability, and ecosystem reliance. Under economic instruments and sustainable financing, a viable alternative to collecting fees from commercial, industrial, and other entities is the land value capture. The principle behind the land value capture is that public action should generate public benefit. Land value capture involves recovering some or all of the increase in land value caused by public actions, such as infrastructure investments or changes in land use regulations for the benefit of the broader community. One instrument, such as betterment levy, may be an option, which requires imposing taxes or fees on land value gains from public infrastructure investments. And this strategy is more effective in managing inflationary pressures and lessens institutional challenges associated with fee collection. Captured value may be remitted to the National Green Infrastructure Fund to ensure dedicated, sustainable, and continuous financing for planning, construction, restoration, and maintenance of green infrastructure, hybrid infrastructure, and nature-based solutions. The Local Government Code also allows LGUs to recover land value increments brought about by infrastructure projects up to 60% under the special levy tool. So, Mr. Chair, these are our inputs from the School of Urban and Regional Planning. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Dean Magnaye. Now I'd like to call on the representative from DTI, Attorney Marvin Tandayo. We're done naman siya. Diba? Oh. BOI, Board of Investments.
Magandang hapon po, Mr. Chair. So we will make this short and sweet. BOI likewise interposes no objection to the bill. The intent appears to align with the Philippines' positioning as regional hub for globally competitive, innovative, and sustainability-driven industries. As a matter of fact po, what was mentioned by our colleagues from FIRB-DOF, both the prevailing and the proposed 2025 and 2028 strategic investments priority plan, which is now submitted to the Office of the President for approval, lists some activities that are strategic, needed by the country for incentives. Among these would include projects that generate carbon credits, growing of forests, rainwater harvesting, climate change-related projects, technologies that facilitate environmental remediation. So the BOI is currently in the process of preparing the position paper. We would like to convey that we are looking forward to contributing to any TWG group or further discussions or dialogues after this, and anything that balances environmental stewardship with safe and sustainable industrial development. Thank you po.
Thank you, BOI. Now I'd like to call on Mr. Ray Mark Tablanza from DILG. Secretariat.
Hello. So, hello, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and our esteemed colleagues. Good afternoon po. The DILG expresses its strong support for the aforementioned House bills. The DILG is committed to collaborating with the national and local government units to ensure the effective implementation of programs that advances sustainable and resilient national development. So we are currently consolidating po the inputs of the department, and we will provide po yung aming position paper later as soon as possible po. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tablanza. Now we'd like to call on the representative from the UAP, United Architects of the Philippines, Architect Jose Miranda.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. The United Architects of the Philippines supports the intent of the proposed measures institutionalizing green infrastructure and nature-based solutions as critical components of climate resilience and sustainable development. The UAP respectively recommends strengthening the bills through explicit recognition of architects and allied professionals, adoption of multidisciplinary design approaches, development of national GI design guidelines, establishment of professional competency frameworks, and inclusion of professional organizations in technical advisory processes. These recommendations aim to ensure that GI implementation results not only in technical compliant infrastructure, but also in safe, functional, maintainable, and people-centered environments. The UAP expresses its full support for legislative efforts to promote climate resilience, ecological sustainability, and improve disaster risk reduction through green infrastructure and nature-based solutions. We believe these measures represent an important opportunity to strengthen the integration of environmental systems, infrastructure planning, and the built environment. As the country's accredited professional organization of architects, we respectfully submit that successful implementation will benefit from stronger integration of design, planning, and sustainability expertise. I would like to mention key professional recommendations such as explicit recognition of architects and environmental planners as part of GI technical teams, promotion of multidisciplinary teams including architects, engineers, planners, landscape architects, and sustainability consultants, development of national green infrastructure, architectural, and urban design guidelines, inclusion of design professionals in national capacity building programs, requirement for life cycle maintenance planning of GI projects, inclusion of professional organizations as technical resource partners. The UAP respectfully suggests that the implementing rules consider also such enhancements as the recognition of spatial design professions in GI planning and implementation sections, requirement for multidisciplinary technical teams for major GI projects, development of technical standards covering architectural integration of GI, establishment of performance metrics for climate and sustainability outcomes, inclusion of maintenance and life cycle management requirements, engagement of accredited professional organizations as technical advisors. In closing, the United Architects of the Philippines reiterates its support for these legislative measures and expresses its readiness to assist Congress and national agencies in developing technical guidelines, professional training programs, and implementation strategies that will ensure the long-term success of green infrastructure policies in the Philippines. We thank the committee for the opportunity to provide our professional inputs and remain committed to supporting policies that advance resilient, sustainable, and people-centered communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Architect Miranda. We'd like to recognize also Architect Alvin Tejada for the green from the Green Architecture Movement.
Good afternoon. Also representing the United Architects of the Philippines as a sustainability practitioner working on green building and climate resilient development. And we would like to express also our support for the intents of the House Bill 4888, 6346 and 6462, and the House Resolution 451. This measure represents an important shift in how we think about infrastructure, not only as engineered systems, but as an integrated ecological and spatial system that must work with nature rather than against it. So from our experience in sustainability practice and green building implementation in the Philippines, we see strong potential for these measures to accelerate climate-responsive development if supported by the right professional integration and technical standard. The architectural profession stands ready to support Congress and national agencies on this, and we thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Architect Tejada. We'll now call on the representative from the Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers. Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, Honorable Chair, and honorable members of the committee. The Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers, just like the other agencies and organizations, supports the bills and resolution that seek the passage of a law for green infrastructure towards disaster resilience. The PIC has a committee on green engineering and disaster resilience and acknowledges that the proposed bills are coherent with the national and international goals for resilience and sustainability. And with that, we join the advocates and the proposed bills in the call for nature-based solutions to our present problems related to natural hazards. But of course, we need to ensure that the implementing guidelines that will be crafted shall involve the relevant stakeholders and come up with risk-based decisions. Let us be reminded and take into consideration that all problems that we face nowadays could have been avoided if we made deep risk analysis and assessments. And it's never too late to do this. So, the PIC has no policy-making powers, but we can be part of the technical groups that will be created in crafting the implementing guidelines. And just to inform everyone, one of our affiliate organizations under the umbrella of the PIC, the Association of Structural Engineers of the Philippines, together with Base Bahay Foundation Incorporated, has already published the Philippine Guidelines on Bamboo Design and Construction, which establish standards for using treated structural bamboo into resilient construction. So the aim of this bamboo code or bamboo guidelines is to use bamboo for disaster resilient, sustainable, and affordable housing, focusing on cement bamboo frame technology. So with that, our organization, the PICE, is willing to provide technical assistance in coming up with implementing guidelines should proposed bills become a law. Thank you, and good afternoon.
Thank you, sir. Actually, there's a bill right now, and it's up for second reading, I think, on bamboo as a sustainable material for the built environment. So this particular measure will address the gap, the policy gap in our national building code. And last night, we also passed a measure on third reading on bamboo products, on procurement of bamboo products, wherein government agencies are mandated to allocate 25% of their furniture and fixtures for bamboo-based and other sustainable materials. So, may good news naman. Thank you. Now, we'd like to call on the representative from the Philippine Institute of Environmental Planners. Do we have a representative? Wala. Landscape architects. Wala. And before we invite IISD, we'd like to call on Action Klima. I think we have a representative from Action Klima, Mr. JL.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is JL Algo, National Coordinator of Action Klima Pilipinas, the Philippines' leading CSO coordination network on climate action. We'll keep our intervention short and sweet as well. Basically, as the rationale for our support of the intent of this bill has already been expressed well by the rest of our colleagues here in this meeting this afternoon. We already submitted our position paper about 6 hours ago. And we hope to actually submit more, depending on how the rest of the proceedings for this particular bill goes today and in the following days, potentially. But most of our concerns about this bill, aside from clarifications about the structure and certain terminologies used, is more on the policy coherence, because we just want to make sure that in the event of enactment, this bill is aligned and also aligns at the same time with the ongoing initiatives, plans, and policies by the likes of the DPWH and the DNR. And I think what the questions asked by the esteemed lawmakers earlier to the representatives of DNR and DPWH already addressed some of the concerns that we have, especially when it comes to infrastructure planning, the reforestation, protection of watersheds, and to use the words of Undersecretary David, hardcore environmental conservation. So that will be all, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Algo. Now we'd like to call on the representative from the International Institute for Sustainable Development. I believe you have a presentation.
Yes, we do, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Honorable Chair and members of the esteemed subcommittee of the Committee on Disaster Resilience. Thank you for inviting the International Institute for Sustainable Development to share evidence on how nature-based infrastructure can strengthen climate adaptation and flood protection while delivering co-benefits. I'm Attorney Frances Joy Cordon Navarro, lead for carbon pricing in Philippines energy transition at IIST. Next slide. Noting the need to be brief, I'll cover 3 evidence points. First is the scale of climate impacts, or EASE in Southeast Asia, which supports evidence on carbon pricing design and revenue recycling, relevant as one potential domestic financing lever for climate action. Next slide. NAP trends evidence. Globally, NAP trends shows that countries are increasingly treating adaptation as a costed, planned investment agenda. The median total cost for NAP implementation is $2.4 billion US, with a wide range from 1.45 million to 349 billion USD. It also shows nature-based approaches are mainstream. 81% or 61 out of 75 NAPs submitted to the UNFCCC reference ecosystem-based adaptation or nature-based solutions, including the Philippines' very own NAP. That sets the global context. Now I'll anchor why this matters for the Philippines. Next. One macroeconomic modeling scenario applying a full list of hazards estimates that for the Philippines, the average annual GDP loss for 2025 to 2050 is $111 billion US per year, with cumulative GDP loss of 2.9 trillion USD, equivalent to 6.8 years of GDP. 2 quick caveats. First, this illustrates the cost of impacts and recovery dynamics, not a full costing of adaptation investments. But it underlines the point. Only counting direct infrastructure damages can underestimate the broader economic value of resilience. Next slide. A key insight that we also found is that faster reconstruction reduces long-run GDP losses. Average GDP loss is much larger when rebuilding takes longer, up to negative 11.1% with a 10-year rebuild versus negative 4.3% with 4 years and negative 3.2% with 1 year. So the question becomes, what kinds of investments can reduce risk and speed recovery? Next. Nature-based infrastructure harnesses nature to provide infrastructure services like forests, wetlands, mangroves, and also includes hybrid solutions like rain gardens, green roofs, and sustainable drainage, combined with engineered structures. Next slide. Why nature-based infrastructure? Next. Traditional gray infrastructure can be high cost, rigid, and sometimes shifts risks rather than reducing them system-wide. Nature-based infrastructure is valuable because it can deliver the same core service like flood protection while adding resilience and co-benefits. Now, when we say co-benefits, we mean the things great projects typically do not deliver. Reduced heat, improved water quality, biodiversity gains, and local livelihood benefits, while still reducing flood exposure. I'll put the valuation evidence behind that next. Our Global Sustainable Asset Valuation Methodology, or SAVI, shows here, compares options in local contexts. These are customized cost-benefit analysis that help decision makers see life cycle costs, avoided losses, and co-benefits. We've applied SAVI to analyze nearly 50 nature-based infrastructure projects globally. Next slide. Examples. Here are just some examples of SAVI assessments across countries and project types, from mangroves and peatlands to stormwater and wastewater projects. The point is this is a repeatable valuation approach, not a one-off story. Next slide. Across IISD valuations, we find NBI can be up to 50% cheaper than conventional built infrastructure, delivering the same services. And it delivers about 28% more value once added benefits and avoided costs are considered. The third bullet in this slide also frames the swap illustration, shifting a portion of investment from gray to NBI where feasible can yield large global savings and additional benefits. Next slide. Now, one challenge is, even when solutions exist, governments need fiscal space. This is where carbon pricing can be relevant, not as a silver bullet, but as a financing lever. This slide summarizes modeling results based in the Philippines, showing that well-designed carbon pricing with revenue recycling can improve economic performance while delivering jobs and emission reductions and generating substantial revenues. In the slide we show there, up to $44.87 billion in cumulative fiscal gains and $44.75 billion in carbon revenues by 2050. Revenue recycling means using carbon pricing revenues intentionally. For example, to fund clean energy and efficiency investments or protect households rather than leaving the revenue unallocated. Next slide. Results. This slide shows why recycling choices matter. With no reallocation, the energy bill rises by 19.7%. But with investment into efficiency and renewables, it can decline by 9.9% versus the business as usual scenario by 2050. And the slide notes reallocation to renewables could reach up to $2.5 billion per year and raise renewables to 50% by 2050. Financing helps, but these bills are ultimately about making green and hybrid solutions implementable and how projects are selected. Next slide. So this is WWF's Philippines Policy Brief evidence that summarizes here points to high exposure and the protective role of forests and restoration for communities and infrastructure. The key takeaway is priority areas can be mapped and nature-based solutions can protect people and assets while restoring ecosystems. Next slide. Operationalizing green first. So first, this is what we would like to suggest in terms of operationalizing green first. It's not green only, it's a decision rule that stops us from defaulting to gray. So first is planners must compare technically feasible gray, green, and hybrid alternatives. Second, they decide using life cycle cost analysis, so we are not fooled or made to decide based simply on low upfront cost that becomes expensive to maintain or fails under future extremes. Third, make the analysis and approval gate linked to project approval and environmental cost certificate of compliance with DENR consulted for ecological soundness. And lastly, the bill builds the pipeline. A national green infrastructure inventory and valuation aligned with PENCAS, so ecosystems are treated as functional infrastructure assets in planning and budgeting. Green first does not mean green only. It simply means using evidence and life cycle economics to choose the option that best protects communities and public finances over time. Thank you so much for your kind attention, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you. I think that's, if you look at the bill, that's the direction to offer green first option, and then you entertain a hybrid, and if the first two approaches are not feasible, then that's the only time you entertain the gray option. Thank you. Before we proceed, would like to request all the resource persons to submit to the committee, to the committee, your respective position paper on these measures.
Mr. Chair, just a
Go ahead.
very quick question na po. Since wala pong representative kanina yung CHED, tanungin ko lang po yung mga practitioners, particularly the architects and engineers in the room, pinag-aaralan po ba natin sa undergrad, sa college, ang nature-based solutions? I believe our friends here from the United Architects for the Philippines would answer.
Okay, good afternoon, sir. And for that question, I'm actually part of the academe as well. No? And nature-based solution is a new concept that is not yet discussed in the undergrad. It's more discussed on the master's and doctorate studies. The introduction of these would better help our students understand. So right now, the orientation for architects to design is always built on using concrete and steel. The innovation even on indigenous material is still under development, so it's good to have this included.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Salamat po.
Thank you, Architect Tejada. Thank you, Honorable Sendanya. Maybe we can also ask the Institute for Civil Engineers. The same?
Yes, Your Honor. It is not yet included in the curriculum for the undergrad, but it is discussed on seminars and in the graduate programs. So maybe we could include in the proposed bill that a certain clause to make it mandatory in the technical courses to be included as part of the undergrad curriculum, just like what we did with the PDRM law.
Thank you. Or part of your continuing professional education.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead,
speaking not as representative of the Department of Agriculture, but of the Agricultural and Biosystems Engineers, there are, I think, 3 subjects under the undergrad, one of which is the Soil and Water Conservation Engineering, which is included in our undergraduate studies. So, and also I agree with you that this will be a requirement for the continuing CPD of professionals engaged in the design and implementation of infrastructures. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. Local government, do we have a representative from the local government units? Just DILG. No, because when we talk about infrastructure, it's not only the national government. No? Ang mga LGUs natin, they are actually at the forefront then of infrastructure. No? Barangay, municipal LGU, provincial LGU. No? So, it's also very important that they are part of the discussion. No? Kasi may mga advocates dito ng green infrastructure. NBS, pag sasabihin mo naman na gagawin yan doon sa munisipyo, ayaw naman nung local chief executive kasi, ay, ano yan, na-experience ko na yan. Kawayan, bubukbukin yan, sir eh. Diba? So, so it will take so much influencing, no, to really transition, to champion this particular advocacy. So we need to, maybe COMSEC, we can ask the the representative of, or DILG, if we can also ask for the League of Cities, even PCL, PCL. Any more question?
Mr. Chair, just a manifestation. I would just like to put on record, kasi hindi po dumating yung kinatawan mula sa DepDev, pero very comprehensive po yung sinabit nila na position paper, and the inputs from the department are very much welcomed.
Thank you, Kong Percy. Yeah, I think DepDev should really be at the forefront of this advocacy, because in their new charter, we really included the one of the mandates is on sustainability. So in terms of the preparation of long-term, short-term, medium-term plans for the country, a core provision there states that sustainability should be at the center of everything, all plannings. Any other comments from our resource persons? So this is a very interesting measure. I hope that should you have any ideas, please feel free to communicate to the Secretariat. So you are most welcome. Before we proceed, I just like to, I forgot. Actually, I'm also one of the authors. And I'd just like to manifest that the explanatory note of House Bill 488 be considered as the sponsorship remarks for this particular measure.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I'd like to move to consolidate and approve House Bill 4888, 6346, 6462, and House Bill 451, subject to style and amendments. Thank you, sir.
Consolidate and approve.
Consolidate and approve these measures.
Second, Mr. Chair.
So there's a motion, duly seconded, to consolidate the how many measures? Four House bills and 3 House bills and 1 House resolution, and to come up with a substitute measure. Any objection? Hearing none, same is approved. Secretary.
Mr. Chair, I move that the members present of the House of Representatives be included as co-authors of these House bills. Thank you.
So there's a duly seconded motion to have all the members present and be considered authors of the substitute measure. Is there any objection? Hearing none, same is approved. Would like to direct the Secretariat to prepare the substitute measure for this for the consolidated bills, subject to amendment and style. So you're still free to submit your suggestions, position papers. Any other concern? What's the favorite motion?
Mr. Chair, with gratitude and hope, I move to adjourn.
So, any objection? Hearing none, same is. This subcommittee meeting of the Committee on Disaster Resilience is hereby adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.